The notification sound cut through the quiet evening like a knife. David glanced at his phone, expecting the usual running late message from his wife. Instead, the words on the screen made his blood run cold. Staying at a coworker's tonight. Project emergency. Don't wait up. He read it once. Twice. 3 times. In their 12 years of marriage, she'd never stayed overnight anywhere without discussing it first. No phone call. No explanation. Just this cold, clinical text at 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday night. David sat frozen on the couch, their golden retriever's head resting on his knee. The TV droned on, some sitcom he'd been watching without really seeing. His thumb hovered over the reply button, but something stopped him. An instinct. A gnawing feeling in his gut that said don't respond yet. That's when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost declined it, but something made him answer. Is this David? A woman's voice, tight with barely controlled anger. Yes, whose? This is Rebecca. My husband works with your wife at Thornfield Consulting. David's heart began to pound. Okay. She texted you saying she's staying with a coworker tonight, didn't she? The world seemed to tilt sideways. How did you? Because my husband just did the same thing to me. Said he's working late on a project emergency. Except here's the funny thing, David, I just called their office. Security said everyone left by 7. The building's been empty for hours. David's mouth went dry. His wife had left the house at 6:30, claiming she had to go back to the office for a critical meeting. I need you to listen to me very carefully, Rebecca continued, her voice shaking now. I tracked my husband's phone. He's at the Riverside Inn, room 304. And I'm betting your wife is there too. The words hit like a physical blow. David stood up so fast the dog yelped in surprise. You tracked his phone? How do you? Family sharing. He doesn't know I can see his location. Thought he was being so clever. A bitter laugh. I'm in my car right now, David. I'm 15 minutes away from that hotel. And I think you should meet me there. Wait, David's mind was racing, trying to process, trying to find an alternative explanation. Maybe there was a mistake. Maybe. Room 304, Riverside Inn. 15 minutes. If you want the truth, be there. She hung up. David stood in the middle of his living room, phone clutched in his hand, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. The house they'd bought together 5 years ago suddenly felt like a stranger's home. The photos on the wall, their wedding, vacations, anniversaries, seemed to mock him from their frames. He looked at his wife's text again. So casual. So cold. Don't wait up. His first instinct was to call her, to demand an explanation, to give her a chance to explain. But something stopped him. If Rebecca was right, if this was what it looked like, then calling would only give them warning. They'd have time to coordinate their stories, to create a plausible lie. David grabbed his keys with shaking hands. As he headed for the door, he caught sight of himself in the hallway mirror. He looked pale, almost ghostly. When had he last really looked at himself? When had he last really looked at his marriage? The drive to the Riverside Inn took 18 minutes. David barely remembered any of it, operating on autopilot while his mind churned through 1,000 possibilities. Each scenario worse than the last. He pulled into the parking lot and immediately spotted a silver SUV with a woman sitting in the driver's seat, engine running, staring at the second floor of the hotel. She looked about his age, early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Even from a distance, he could see the tension in her shoulders. David parked next to her and got out. Their eyes met through the windows, and in that moment, two strangers shared a look of perfect, terrible understanding. They were about to discover a truth that would shatter everything they thought they knew. Rebecca stepped out of her SUV, and David noticed she was holding her phone like a weapon. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry, past tears, into something harder and more dangerous. David, she asked, though she clearly already knew. Yeah. His voice came out hoarse. Room 304. She nodded toward the second floor. Third window from the left. Lights are on. I've been sitting here for 10 minutes trying to decide if I'm crazy. If this is really happening. David looked up at the window. An ordinary hotel room, curtains partially drawn. Behind that window, his entire life might be falling apart. His car is right there, Rebecca pointed to a black sedan 3 spaces over. I'd recognize it anywhere. I helped him pick it out last year for his birthday. The detail hit David harder than it should have. The mundane intimacy of choosing a car together, making breakfast, sharing a bed, all while planning betrayal. How long have you suspected? David asked. Rebecca laughed, a sound entirely devoid of humor. That's the thing, I didn't. Not really. There were little things, maybe. Working late more often. More protective of his phone. But I trusted him. Isn't that pathetic? She turned to look at David directly. What about you? I had no idea, David admitted. Not until that text 30 minutes ago. It just felt wrong. She's never done anything like that before. They've been working together for what, 8 months? Rebecca's jaw clenched. The Thornfield merger project. That's when it started for us too. The late nights. The work emergencies. David felt sick. His wife had joined the Thornfield team in March. 8 months ago. All those evenings she'd come home exhausted, complaining about demanding clients and impossible deadlines. He'd been supportive, understanding. He'd picked up more of the household responsibilities, told her he was proud of how hard she was working. He'd been such a fool. So what do we do? David asked. Knock on the door. Rebecca's expression hardened. I've got the master key. What? How? She held up a key card. I worked front desk at hotels through college. I know exactly what to say. While I was waiting for you, I went to the lobby, told them I'm staying in 304 but locked myself out. Showed them my ID, Rebecca Williams. My husband checked in under his name, but they barely glanced at it. Handed over the key without a second thought. David stared at her with a mixture of horror and admiration. She'd been planning this, thinking clearly while her world collapsed. He couldn't even feel his hands. I want you to know something before we go up there, Rebecca said. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it because I need to see it with my own eyes. Because if I don't, he'll gaslight me. Tell me I'm paranoid, that I'm imagining things. I need proof. I understand, David said, though he wasn't sure he did. Part of him wanted to get back in his car and drive away, to live in uncertainty rather than face what waited behind that door. But he followed Rebecca anyway, across the parking lot and up the exterior stairs. Each step felt like walking toward an execution. His heart hammered so hard he could hear it in his ears. They reached the door marked 304. From inside, David could hear the TV, some news channel, volume low. The mundane normalcy of it made him want to scream. Rebecca looked at him one last time. Ready? He wasn't. He'd never be ready. But he nodded. She slid the key card into the lock. The light flashed green. The mechanism clicked. Rebecca pushed open the door. The scene before them was almost anticlimactic in its ordinariness. A hotel room like thousands of others, generic art on the walls, a queen bed with rumpled covers, clothes scattered on chairs. David's wife sat on the edge of the bed in a hotel robe, her hair damp from a recent shower. Rebecca's husband stood by the dresser in jeans and an undershirt, 2 glasses of wine in his hands. They both froze. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The TV droned on about stock markets and weather patterns. Then David's wife stood up slowly, her face draining of all color. David. Don't. The word came out harder than he'd intended. Don't say my name. Don't say anything. Rebecca's husband, the man David now recognized from company events, the man he'd shaken hands with, made small talk with, set down the wine glasses with shaking hands. Rebecca, this isn't. Isn't what, James? Isn't what it looks like. Rebecca's voice was ice. You're in a hotel room with another woman, fresh from the shower, wine in hand. Please, enlighten me. What exactly is this? We were just talking, David's wife tried. Her name was Sarah. He could barely think it now without feeling sick. The project, it's been so stressful. In a hotel room. David found his voice. You needed a hotel room to talk about work. You couldn't talk at the office? At a coffee shop? Anywhere that doesn't come with a bed? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Help me understand why you texted me instead of calling. Why you lied about where you were. Why you're wearing a hotel robe. The tears spilled over, and David felt a surge of anger so intense it frightened him. How dare she cry? How dare she try to make him feel guilty when she was the one? Get out, Rebecca said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Both of you, she continued, looking at David. I need to talk to my husband alone. And you need to talk to your wife. But not here. Not like this. She was right. David knew she was right. This wasn't the place for the conversation they needed to have. Sarah, he said, his voice strange and distant to his own ears. Get dressed. Meet me at home in 1 hour. If you're not there, don't bother coming back at all. He turned and walked out, leaving the door open behind him. He didn't trust himself to stay in that room another second. Behind him, he heard Rebecca's voice, cold and controlled. Start talking, James. And don't you dare lie to me. David sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He couldn't drive yet. Couldn't trust himself behind the wheel with this much adrenaline coursing through his veins. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Please let me explain. I'm so sorry. Please. He deleted it without responding. Another buzz. David, please. It's not what you think. How many times had he heard that line in movies, in books? He'd always wondered how anyone could be stupid enough to believe it. Now he understood. It wasn't about believing. It was about desperately wanting there to be another explanation, any explanation, that didn't mean your entire life was built on lies. He started the car and drove home, taking the long way, needing the time to think. Or maybe not to think. To just exist in the space between knowing and confronting, between his old life and whatever came next. When he pulled into their driveway, the house looked exactly as he'd left it 40 minutes ago. The porch light on, the living room lamp visible through the window. Everything the same, everything different. Inside, the dog greeted him with confused enthusiasm, sensing his distress but not understanding it. David collapsed onto the couch and buried his face in his hands. How long had it been going on? 8 months, Rebecca had said. 8 months of lies. 8 months of working late and project emergencies and difficult clients. 8 months of coming home to him, sleeping next to him, making plans for their future, all while carrying on with James. The worst part wasn't even the physical betrayal, though that cut deep enough. It was the deception. The calculated nature of it. The text message tonight. So casual, so confident. Don't wait up. As if she had every right to stay out all night, as if 12 years of marriage meant so little she could brush him off with a handful of words. His phone rang. Not Sarah this time, Rebecca. Don't answer your wife's calls, she said without preamble. Not yet. I wasn't planning to, David said. Good. Listen, I need to tell you something. James is talking. Well, he's trying not to, but I know him. I know every tell, every lie. Her voice was steadier now, controlled fury replacing shock. This has been going on for 6 months. 6 months. Not 8. Somehow the specificity made it worse. They met up twice a week, sometimes 3 times. Always said it was work. Sometimes it was just drinks, sometimes. She paused. Sometimes it was hotels. This isn't the first time. David felt the room spin. Multiple times. Multiple hotels. While he'd been home cooking dinner, walking the dog, believing in his marriage. There's more, Rebecca continued. They were planning to tell us. Not now, they weren't ready. But eventually, they've been talking about leaving us. About being together. The words hit like bullets. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning a future. Together. James is crying now, Rebecca said, her tone detached. Begging me to understand. Saying they didn't mean for it to happen, that they fought it, but they fell in love. She laughed bitterly. Fell in love. Like they're the victims here. Like this just happened to them. What are you going to do? David asked. I don't know yet. But I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to make this easy for them. They want to be together. They can do it while paying lawyers and splitting assets and explaining to everyone we know why their marriages fell apart. A car pulled into David's driveway. Through the window, he saw Sarah get out, still in her work clothes now, moving slowly like she was walking to her own execution. She's here, David said. Don't let her control the narrative, Rebecca advised. Don't let her make you feel guilty for being angry. You have every right to your anger. Thanks, Rebecca, for calling me. For all of this. We betrayed spouses have to stick together, she said. Call me if you need to talk. I'm serious. They hung up as Sarah's key turned in the lock. She stepped inside, and David was struck by how small she looked. She'd always been petite, but now she seemed to have folded in on herself. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her makeup smeared. David, she started. 6 months, he said. Not tonight. Not last week. 6 months. Her face crumbled. How did you? Rebecca told me. While you were probably coordinating your story with James, his wife was getting the truth out of him. David stood up, needing the height advantage, needing to feel like he had some control. 6 months of lies. Multiple hotels. And you were planning to leave me. To be with him. It's not that simple. Then explain it to me. His voice rose despite his best efforts. Explain how it's complicated to sleep with another man while you're married to me. Explain how it's complicated to look me in the eye every day while you're planning your future with someone else. Sarah sank into the chair across from him, her whole body shaking. I didn't plan this. It just happened. That's what you're going with. It just happened. You accidentally ended up in bed with him? Multiple times? For 6 months. We were working together closely, and he understood things about my work that you never, she stopped, realizing what she'd said. That I never what? Never understood? Never cared about? David felt his anger crystallizing into something colder and harder. I supported your career. I encouraged you to take that position. I picked up the slack at home so you could focus on work. And this is how you repay that. You were always so content, Sarah said, her voice breaking. So satisfied with our routine. Dinner at 6, TV after, bed by 10. The same conversations, the same life, year after year. James made me feel alive again. David stared at his wife, this woman he'd built a life with, and realized he didn't know her at all. So this is my fault? Our marriage was too boring, so you had to go find excitement with someone else. That's not what I'm saying. That's exactly what you're saying. Instead of talking to me, instead of suggesting we change things, you lied. You cheated. You made me believe everything was fine while you were falling in love with another man. Sarah buried her face in her hands. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. When were you going to tell me? David asked. Or were you just going to keep this going until you and James were ready to blow up both marriages on your schedule? We were going to tell you both next month, she whispered. After the holidays. We didn't want to ruin Christmas. The casual cruelty of it took his breath away. The next morning, David woke up alone in the guest bedroom, momentarily disoriented before the previous night came crashing back. Sarah had slept in their bedroom, former bedroom, he corrected himself mentally. Nothing was theirs anymore. He found her in the kitchen, looking like she hadn't slept at all. She'd made coffee, a peace offering that felt absurdly inadequate given the circumstances. We need to talk, she said quietly. We talked last night. No, you were angry and I was defensive. We need to really talk. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd shared thousands of meals. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please, just hear me out. David poured himself coffee and sat, maintaining distance. Fine. Talk. Sarah took a shaky breath. James and I. It started innocently. Working late, grabbing dinner after. He was going through problems with Rebecca, and you and I were in a rut. It felt good to talk to someone who understood the pressure of the job, who got my frustrations. Lots of people have work friends, David said coldly. They don't sleep with them. I know that. But it escalated. One night we had too much wine, and we kissed. I immediately regretted it, told him it couldn't happen again. She looked down at her hands. But it did. And then it kept happening. And somewhere along the way, I started having feelings for him. You fell in love with him while married to me. Yes. At least she didn't try to deny it. But I love you too, David. I never stopped loving you. He laughed bitterly. You have a funny way of showing love. 6 months, Sarah. Half a year of lying to my face every single day. I was trying to figure out what to do. I was confused, torn between two lives. So you chose to have both. Keep me as the safe, stable husband while exploring your exciting romance with James. David set down his coffee cup harder than intended. Did you ever think about me? About what this would do to me when I found out? I thought maybe you'd never have to know. That I'd end it with James and things would go back to normal. But you didn't end it. You kept seeing him. You checked into hotels with him. You planned a future with him. Sarah's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it and flinched. James? David asked. She nodded. He's asking if we're okay. If we've talked. How considerate of him. David stood up. I want you out of the house. Today. David, please. You don't get to please anymore. You don't get to ask for understanding or forgiveness or time. You made your choices, now live with them. This is my house too. Then call a lawyer. Start the process. Because we're done, Sarah. Whatever we were, whatever we had, it's over. The finality in his voice seemed to break through her defenses. She started crying again, but David felt nothing. No sympathy, no desire to comfort her. That instinct had died in a hotel room last night. His phone rang. Rebecca again. Excuse me, he told Sarah, stepping into the other room. Rebecca. Are you busy? She sounded exhausted. Finishing a conversation. Why? Can we meet? There's something you need to know. Something James told me this morning that changes everything. David's stomach dropped. What is it? Not over the phone. Can you meet me at Morrison's coffee shop in an hour? Yeah, I'll be there. When David returned to the kitchen, Sarah was staring at her phone, tears streaming down her face. What now? David asked, his patience exhausted. James broke up with me. Her voice was hollow. Text message. Said Rebecca gave him an ultimatum, end it with me and try to save their marriage, or she's taking everything in the divorce. He chose her. David should have felt satisfaction. Instead, he just felt tired. So he was willing to blow up both our marriages, but only as long as it didn't cost him anything. The moment there were real consequences, he bailed. He said he loves me, Sarah whispered. He lied to you. Just like you lied to me. Funny how that works. Sarah looked up at him, devastated. What am I supposed to do now? That's not my problem anymore. David grabbed his keys. I want you out by tonight. Go stay with your sister, your parents, I don't care. But I want you gone when I get back. Where are you going? To meet Rebecca. Turns out the person I can trust most right now is the wife of the man you were sleeping with. Think about that. He left her sitting there and drove to Morrison's, the local coffee shop where he and Sarah used to meet for Sunday brunch. Another memory tainted. Rebecca was already there, sitting in a back corner booth. She looked as wrecked as he felt, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back messily, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater. The polished woman from last night was gone, replaced by someone who'd been through battle. "Thanks for coming," she said as he sat down. "You sounded serious. What's going on?" Rebecca pulled out her phone. "James talked to me this morning. Really talked, for the first time in our marriage. He's terrified I'm going to leave him, terrified of losing the kids, the house, everything." She paused. "So he told me the whole truth. All of it. There's more than 6 months of hotels. The affair part, that's accurate. But there's something else. Something they were planning that you need to know about." She slid her phone across the table, showing him a series of text messages between James and Sarah. David read them, his blood going cold. They weren't just planning to leave their spouses. They'd been siphoning money from joint accounts. Sarah had opened a separate bank account 3 months ago, one David knew nothing about, and had been transferring funds from their savings. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. $28,000 total. James had done the same with his and Rebecca's money. Together, they'd accumulated nearly $60,000 in preparation for their new life together. "They were going to blindside us," Rebecca said quietly. "Leave us right after the holidays, take the money they'd hidden, and start fresh." James had even started looking at apartments across town. David felt like he might be sick. "She stole from me. She's been stealing from me for months. From both of us. And here's the best part. James says it was Sarah's idea. She suggested they'd need a financial cushion for the transition. The woman David had married, the woman he'd trusted with everything, had been planning to rob him blind and disappear. "What are you going to do?" David asked. "James is drawing up papers right now, transferring back every penny plus half of his retirement account. He's scared of criminal charges, and honestly, he should be." Rebecca's expression hardened. "What they did, that's theft, fraud. We could press charges." "Could we actually?" "My lawyer seems to think so. At minimum, it's marital asset dissipation, which plays very badly in divorce proceedings." She leaned back. "James is willing to give me almost everything to avoid that. The house, primary custody of the kids, 70% of assets. He just wants to avoid jail and scandal." David's mind was racing. "Sarah doesn't know you know about the money." "Not unless James told her, which I doubt since he threw her under the bus this morning." An idea formed, cold and calculated. What if we don't tell her yet? What if we let her think she's gotten away with it? Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "What are you thinking?" 3 days later, David sat across from Sarah in a lawyer's office, the atmosphere thick with tension. She'd spent the last 72 hours texting him constantly, apologizing, begging for another chance, claiming she'd made a terrible mistake. He'd responded minimally, just enough to agree to this meeting. Sarah thought they were here for mediation, to discuss trying to reconcile. She'd dressed carefully, wearing the blue dress he'd always liked, her hair styled the way it was on their wedding day. The manipulation was so transparent it would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. "Thank you both for coming," the lawyer, Ms. Patterson, said. She was a stern woman in her 50s that Rebecca had recommended. "Mr. Hayes, you requested this meeting to discuss the dissolution of your marriage." Sarah's face fell. "Dissolution? David, I thought we were going to talk about counseling." "No," David said simply. "We're here to talk about divorce. And theft." "Theft?" Sarah's confusion looked genuine. "What are you talking about?" Ms. Patterson slid a document across the table. "Mrs. Hayes, are you familiar with account number ending in 7843 at First National Bank?" Sarah went pale. "That's a joint savings account you share with your husband," Ms. Patterson continued. "Over the past 3 months, you've made unauthorized withdrawals totaling $28,000, transferring them to a separate account your husband knew nothing about. Is that correct?" That's our money. Marital assets. I'm allowed. You're allowed to make reasonable withdrawals for household expenses and known purchases, Ms. Patterson interrupted. Secretly siphoning off money to fund your planned departure with your affair partner? That's called marital asset dissipation. And in this state, it's taken very seriously in divorce proceedings. Sarah looked at David, panic replacing her careful composure. How did you know about that? James told Rebecca everything, David said, including your plan to leave right after the holidays with your hidden money. He's already paid it all back to her, by the way. With interest. He told her. Sarah's voice rose. But he said, he promised. He lied to you. Just like you lied to me. Shocking, isn't it? Turns out people who cheat can't be trusted. Ms. Patterson laid out more documents. Here's what's going to happen, Mrs. Hayes. You have two options. Option 1. You return every penny you took, plus half your retirement account as compensation for emotional distress and breach of marital trust. You agree to a quick, uncontested divorce where Mr. Hayes keeps the house, the car, and most of the liquid assets. You get your personal belongings and whatever furniture he's willing to part with. That's insane. I'd be left with almost nothing. Option 2, Ms. Patterson continued calmly. Mr. Hayes files criminal charges for theft and fraud. The district attorney is a friend of mine, and she's very interested in financial crimes. You'd be looking at felony charges, possible jail time, and a public scandal that would destroy your career at Thornfield Consulting. Sarah turned to David, tears streaming. You wouldn't do that to me. You loved me. I loved who I thought you were, David said. That person doesn't exist. And yes, I absolutely would press charges. You stole from me, Sarah. You lied to me every day for 6 months. You planned to abandon me and take my money. Why would I show you mercy? Because it's cruel. Because you're better than this. I'm exactly as good as I need to be. No better, no worse. You taught me that. Ms. Patterson checked her watch. You have until 5 p.m. today to decide, Mrs. Hayes. Option 1, sign the agreement and return the money. Or option 2, we file charges tomorrow morning. Your choice. Sarah looked between them, trapped. Can I call someone? My lawyer. You're welcome to, Ms. Patterson said. Though I should mention, Mr. Hayes has documentation of every transfer, every hotel charge, every lie. Your lawyer will tell you the same thing I am. Take the deal. David stood up. 5 p.m. Sarah. Don't be late. He walked out, leaving her crying in the conference room. Outside, Rebecca was waiting in her car. How'd it go? She asked as he got in. She's cornered. She'll take the deal. Good. Rebecca pulled out of the parking lot. James signed his papers this morning. I get the house, the kids during the week, and 70% of everything. He also has to pay for counseling for the children when we tell them. When are you telling them? This weekend. I want to be the one to explain, before they hear it from someone else. She glanced at him. What about you? How are you really doing? David considered the question. I'm angry, betrayed, hurt, but also relieved. Is that wrong? Not even a little bit. I feel the same way. Rebecca smiled grimly. I keep thinking about all those years I spent being the perfect wife. Cooking his favorite meals, supporting his career, raising his children. And he thanked me by sleeping with your wife. At least they got what they deserved, David said. They lose everything, and they don't even get each other. James is already on dating apps, Rebecca said. Saw it on his phone yesterday. Your wife was just one of many, I think. I was too trusting to see it before. They drove in silence for a while, two people who'd had their lives blown apart by two other people's selfishness. What are you going to do now? Rebecca asked eventually. After the divorce. I don't know. Travel, maybe. I've always wanted to see Ireland. Sarah never wanted to go. Too far, too expensive, too much planning. He laughed. I don't have to consider what Sarah wants anymore. I'm thinking of going back to school, Rebecca said. I gave up my master's program when I got pregnant with our first. Always regretted it. You should do it. Maybe I will. At 5:15, David's phone rang. Sarah's lawyer. Mr. Hayes, my client accepts your terms. She'll sign the papers and return the funds by Monday. Good, David said and hung up. It was over. 12 years of marriage ended not with love or reconciliation, but with legal documents and financial penalties. Sarah would walk away with a fraction of what she'd tried to steal, her reputation damaged, her relationship with James over before it really began. A month later, David sat in his house now, legally and completely, with a glass of wine and a travel brochure for Ireland. The divorce had been finalized that morning. Sarah had moved to another city, taken a job with a different company. He'd heard through mutual friends she was struggling, lonely, regretting everything. He felt no satisfaction in her suffering, but no sympathy either. Just nothing. She was a stranger who'd once lived in his house. His phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca, drinks tonight? I need adult conversation that doesn't involve lawyers or lying ex-spouses. David smiled. Morrison's at 7. See you there. He wasn't ready for anything romantic, might never be ready again. But friendship with someone who understood exactly what he'd been through. That was something worth having. As the sun set through his living room window, David raised his glass in a solitary toast. To new beginnings. To hard-won lessons. To never again ignoring his instincts when something felt wrong. The dog ambled over and rested her head on his knee, and David scratched behind her ears. Just you and me now, girl, he said. And you know what? That's enough. For the first time in weeks, he meant it.